and nuts, usually plundered by man in the autumn. According to some observers, it must know something of the joys of a miser, and yet it remains sociable. It always lives in large villages, and Audubon, who opened some dwellings of the Haki in the winter, found several individuals in the same apartment. They must have stored it with common efforts. The large tribe of the marmots, which includes the three large genuses of Octomys, Cynomys, and Spermophilus, is still more sociable and still more intelligent. They also prefer having each one its own dwelling, but they live in big villages. That terrible enemy of the crops of South Russia, the suslik, of which some 10 millions are exterminated every year by man alone, lives in numberless colonies, and while the Russian provincial assemblies gravely discuss the means of getting rid of this enemy of society, it enjoys life in its thousands in the most joyful way. Their play is so charming that no observer could refrain paying them a tribute of praise, and from mentioning the melodious concerts arising from the sharp whistlings of the males and the melancholic whistlings of the females before suddenly returning to his citizen's duties, he begins inventing the most diabolic means for the extermination of the little robbers. All kinds of rapacious birds and beasts of prey having proved powerless, the last word of science in this warfare is the inoculation of cholera. The villages of the prairie dogs in America are one of the loveliest sights. As far as the eye can embrace the prairie, it sees heaps of earth, and on each of them a prairie dog stands, engaged in a lively conversation with its neighbors by means of short barkings. As soon as the approach of man is signaled, all plunge in a moment into their dwellings, all have disappeared as by enchantment. But if the danger is over, the little creatures soon reappear. Whole families come out of their galleries and indulge in play. The young ones scratch one another, they worry one another, and display their gracefulness while standing upright, and in the meantime the old ones keep watch. They go visiting one another, and the beaten footpaths which connect all their heaps testify to the frequency of the visitations. In short, the best naturalists have written some of their best pages in describing the associations of the prairie dogs of America, the marmots of the Old World, and the polar marmots of the alpine regions. And yet I must make, as regards the marmots, the same remark as I have made when speaking of the bees. They have maintained their fighting instincts, and these instincts reappear in captivity. But in their big associations, in the face of free nature, the unsociable instincts have no opportunity to develop, and the general result is peace and harmony. Even such harsh animals as the rats, which continually fight in our cellars, are sufficiently intelligent not to quarrel when they plunder our larders, but to aid one another in their plundering expeditions and migrations, and even to feed their invalids. As to the beaver rats or musk rats of Canada, they are extremely sociable. Audubon could not but admire their peaceful communities, which require only being left in peace to enjoy happiness. Like all sociable animals, they are lively and playful. They easily combine with other species, and they have attained a very high degree of intellectual development. In their villages, always disposed on the shores of lakes and rivers, they take into account the changing level of water. Their dome-shaped houses, which are built of peat and clay interwoven with reeds, have separate corners for organic refuse, and their halls are well carpeted at winter time. They are warm and nevertheless well ventilated. As to the beavers, which are endowed as known with a most sympathetic character, their astounding dams and villages, in which generations live and die without knowing of any enemies but the otter and man, so wonderfully illustrate what mutual aid can achieve for the security of a species and the evolution of intelligence, that they are familiar to all interested in animal life. Let me only remark that with the beavers, the muskrats, and some other rodents, we already find the feature which will also be distinctive of human communities, that is, work in common. I pass in silence the two large families which include the jerboa, the chinchilla, the biscacha, and the tushkan or underground hare of South Russia, though all these small rodents might be taken as excellent illustrations of the pleasures derived by animals from social life. With regard to the biscacha, it is very interesting to note that these highly sociable little animals not only live peaceably together in each village, but that whole villages visit each other at nights. Sociability is thus extended to the whole species, not only to a given society or to a nation as we saw it with the ants. When the farmer destroys a viscacha burrow and buries the inhabitants under a heap of earth, other viscachas, we are told by Hudson, come from a distance to dig out those that are buried alive. (LC, page 311). This is a widely known fact in La Plata, verified by the author. Precisely the pleasures, because it is extremely difficult to say what brings animals together, the needs of mutual protection, or simply the pleasure of feeling surrounded by their congeners. At any rate, our common hares, which do not gather in societies for life in common, and which are not even endowed with intense parental feelings, cannot live without coming together for play. Dietrich de Winkel, who is considered to be among the best acquainted with the habits of hares, describes them as passionate players, becoming so intoxicated by their play that a hare has been known to take an approaching fox for a playmate. Handbook for Jugger und Jagdberäutige, quoted by Bram Segon, 223. As to the rabbit, it lives in societies, and its family life is entirely built upon the image of the old patriarchal family, the young ones being kept in absolute obedience to the father and even the grandfather. Buffon's Histoire Naturelle. And here we have the example of two very closely allied species which cannot bear each other, not because they live upon nearly the same food as like cases are too often explained, but most probably because the passionate, eminently individualist hare cannot make friends with that placid, quiet, and submissive creature, the rabbit. Their tempers are too widely different not to be an obstacle to friendship. Life in societies is again the rule with the large family of horses, which includes the wild horses and donkeys of Asia, the zebras, the mustangs, the cimarrons of the pampas, and the half-wild horses of Mongolia and Siberia. They all live in numerous associations, made up of many studs, each of which consists of a number of males under the leadership of a male. These numberless inhabitants of the Old and the New World, badly organized on the whole for resisting both their numerous enemies and the adverse conditions of climate, would soon have disappeared from the surface of the earth were it not for their sociable spirit. When a beast of prey approaches them, several studs unite at once. They repulse the beast and sometimes chase it, and neither the wolf nor the bear, not even the lion, can capture a horse or even a zebra as long as they are not detached from the herd. When a drought is burning the grass in the prairies, they gather in hordes of sometimes 10,000 individuals strong, and migrate. And when a snowstorm rages in the steppes, each stud keeps close together and repairs to a protected ravine. But if confidence disappears, or the group has been seized by panic and disperses, the horses perish and the survivors are found after the storm half dying from fatigue. Union is the chief arm in the struggle for life, and man is the chief enemy. Before his increasing numbers, the ancestors of our domestic horse (the Equus Przewalski, so named by Polyakov) have preferred to retire to the wildest and least accessible plateaus on the outskirts of Tibet, where they continue to live surrounded by carnivores under a climate as bad as that of the Arctic regions, but in a region inaccessible to man. In connection with the horses, it is worthy of notice that the quagga zebra, which never comes together with the doe zebra, nevertheless lives on excellent terms not only with ostriches, which are very good sentries, but also with gazelles, several species of antelopes, and gnus. We thus have a case of mutual dislike between the quagga and the doe, which cannot be explained by competition for food. The fact that the quagga lives together with ruminants feeding on the same grass as itself excludes that hypothesis, and we must look for some incompatibility of character, as in the case of the hare and the rabbit. Cf. among others Clive Phillips Wallay's Big Game Shooting (Badminton Library), which contains excellent illustrations of various species living together in East Africa. Many striking illustrations of social life could be taken from the life of the reindeer, and especially of that large division of ruminants which might include the roebucks, the fallow deer, the antelopes, the gazelles, the ibex, and in fact the whole of the three numerous families of the antilopids, the caprids, and the ovids. Their watchfulness over the safety of their herds against attacks of carnivores, the anxiety displayed by all individuals in a herd of chamois as long as all of them have not cleared a difficult passage over rocky cliffs, the adoption of orphans, the despair of a gazelle whose mate or even comrade of the same sex has been killed, the plays of youngsters, and many other features could be mentioned. But perhaps the most striking illustration of mutual support is given by the occasional migrations of fallow deer, such as I saw once on the Amur, when I crossed the high plateau and its border ridge, the Great Khingan, on my way from Transbaikalia to Mergen, and further travelled over the high prairies on my way to the Amur. I could ascertain how thinly people with fallow deer these mostly uninhabited regions are. Our youngest hunter, who was going to marry and therefore was prompted by the desire of getting as many